there's an alarm going off now. There was a slightly different one I heard from my apartment, which is more like a which has been going on since 3 a.m. And this happened before when I first moved here. And I recall it being Chase Bank and that building, which is directly across from my building. And what I realized was the Chase Bank alarm wouldn't go off until someone showed up for work. Now we have, like, sounds like an alarm actually in the church. It's hard to tell. But from 3 o'clock onward, right here. Well, if you wanted a light from God. So there's an alarm in the church. Now I hear the zzz, zzz, zzz. But the one I heard from 3 o'clock in the morning sounded very similar. Not eerily, it wasn't really eerie, it's just like annoying. Similar to the Chase Bank one when I first moved here. And I realized there's no one to call who works in the building, or like, because it's like a storefront bank branch. And I guess the same with the church, if there's no one here to call. Although you would expect like neighboring buildings to call, like whoever hears it, they could call. I don't know how it works in terms of having keys to get in to turn everything off, or what have you. I guess when it comes to, you think there'd be like a skeleton key. I don't know how it works with, I guess if there's a raging fire, they would just break down a door or a window. But they'll just let it go until someone comes in and they can come over and turn it off and disengage the alarm. Assuming it's just the church, if it were another building in addition to the church, it would remind me of having done overnights over on 133 South Bread Street area. There's a whole cluster of apartments that are two-story apartments. They feel kind of, they're very like spacious. They almost feel like suburban. They're unusual apartments, and it can feel like you're on a movie set when you're in them. It's echoey, and anyway, they had an entire blackout on their block when I was doing overnights one time, and this is after 2011, and it would be the second time that a scare tactic of, you know, serial high proportions was set off. There it is. There's the zzz, zzz sound. Figure out who it is and go this way. I'm doing this just because I'm curious, like, why I couldn't hear this heavier alarm when I came out the back door. But anyway, point being, back when, you know, I often talk about in 2011 when I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment, and there was a blizzard, like we had snow, blizzards, the whole 9 yards. I really did believe it was the last night of my life. My life turned on a dime. You know, I had just turned 40, I think. You know, and it felt like as if someone in the universe thought Sharon needed to learn a lesson. Can you imagine someone doing that to you, and you're basically like doing okay-ish, meaning you're not a problem, you know? Can you imagine someone coming along and treating you like that? And you're like, what did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. You know, you have to be put on the right track. It's like, well, you know, first of all, I'm an adult, and second of all, I was in a running group at the time. I was volunteering with a bunch of groups. So, anyway, but that would be the worst of the worst, and a whole bunch of things unfolded since then. And then when I would do overnights, like a year and a half, 2 years later, at 133 South Brent Street, there was an entire blackout of these old city blocks. And this is the sound I've been hearing all night. I didn't hear it when I first started. And it was pretty scary. There were a whole bunch of things that played into that being a very scary night. So that ranked number 2 behind, you know, the 4th Monday of January 2011. So how many people who either come to Philadelphia or in Philadelphia learned how to put on a show and scare the hell out of certain people? And how illegal is that? Very. We are talking federal prison for life. Scary. So, illegal. Vince, someone's at the store at Vince, which is part of the building across the street. It's kind of hard to tell exactly where that sound comes from because it echoes around the building. In the past, I would have thought it was Chase Bank. Sounds very similar. So we have both the church and another building honking. Oh, there it is. There's a blinking light. You can, I don't know if you can tell, it's up here, but it's next door to Chase, and on the probably 4th floor, if you will, is where you can see the firefighter blinking light. So that's, you know, a bank or a store. It's not Santander, is it? It's more like... So we have a church and Wells Fargo. Church and Wells Fargo. You can't tell. There's no blinking light down here to indicate. Usually the whole store, like Wells Fargo, would be blinking as well, but it's just the fire alarm behind Wells Fargo, like whatever's, you know, above the Wells Fargo bank branch, which is all snuggled up next to Chase. So I don't know who was here first, Chase or Wells Fargo. So Resurrection Church and the dwelling or the building edifice in which Wells Fargo resides, both with an alarm going off. The church one started as I came down the stairs, although I thought I heard, there were 2 sounds I heard last night. One went away, I thought it was a car alarm. Then the one at Wells Fargo just kept going and going and going. I didn't know it was Wells Fargo. I thought it was Chase. Close enough. So they must be on a similar system. They have the same exact sound. People at Wells Fargo don't show up so much later. In fact, I never actually see people who work at Wells Fargo because they're tucked back in there. Chase is all open, you know, corner glass lot, and you can see when, you know, employees show up and they have, you know, a whole guy who shows up, a constable security. They call themselves constable. I think it's just the name of their security company.